One of the most tragic things I know about human nature is that all of us tend to put off living. We're all dreaming of some magical rose garden over the horizon instead of enjoying the roses that are blooming outside of our windows today. And that was said by Dale Carnegie. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Igan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I will be your host for the next hour. We're always looking for the greener grass on the other side. We're always looking for the better world that exists just over the horizon. But in doing so, we tend to remove our attention from that which is directly around us and the things that we have in our life that are of benefit to us right now. This is again another extension of the programming which most of society is under that tends to lead us towards searching for happiness in that which is external to ourselves. It tends to condition us to believe that the grass is always greener on the other side, when such is not the case. And it's the same when looking for remedies to our current situation, folks. We're always looking for a way out of our predicament by using the parameters of the system by which we are controlled, but we're not really ever seeing that which is right before our eyes, which gives us the ability to step above the system. Because we each have the ability to do that, folks, but the problem is that, again, we are taught to always look for remedy in that which is external to ourselves. And in doing so, we remove ourselves of our own personal power. Or worse still, we very often don't ever come to the realization that that power even exists in the first place. And again, folks, all of this is the result of social programming. Now, when we look at the global situation today, there's no doubt that we are in dire straits as a species. We really are. And all of the trouble that we're facing, all of the difficulties we're facing as a species, all of the conflict that we're seeing around the planet, and all of the hardship that we're seeing amongst the communities of our planet in all countries, the hardship of people here in Australia, the hardship of people in America, in England, in Europe, and not even to mention what's going on in the third world countries. But what I'm saying here is that we're seeing this hardship across the board now, affecting the middle-class societies of virtually all Western nations. People are really beginning to struggle. So there is no doubt that we are in dire straits as a species, and there is no doubt whatsoever that all of the difficulty we're facing has been inflicted upon mankind via the actions of governments, those public trustees that we elect to manage our infrastructure for us. What these people have done is they have created a system and have been operating a system which is a system of slavery, which has been used to milk the wealth of the population and transfer it into private hands. Essentially, it's a system that has been used to dispossess virtually all of mankind and place the ownership of the planet into private hands. Well, the perceived ownership of the planet anyway, because you can't own the planet. But unfortunately, most of mankind has been tricked into believing that they can own the planet, or they can own part of the planet, and so that is the situation we now find ourselves in. But really, it's just a trick, folks. It's just an illusion, because you can't own the earth or any part of the earth. The earth is the earth. It's not something that can be owned. But anyway, I'm probably getting a little bit off topic there and running off on another tangent, as I often tend to do. But essentially, what I'm saying here, folks, is that we have a very dire situation developing on this planet, and it's already well underway. And folks, I've spent the last few years looking at remedies and looking at any possible spark of light that I could see at the end of the tunnel that may lead to empowerment for the people. And there's been a lot of false hopes raised. There's been a lot of red herrings along the way. There's been a lot of misleading organizations that have been founded. And ultimately, it's always come back to the same thing, no matter how far I've looked. And every time I've been distracted from that path and led down a little alleyway of false hope by trusting in an organization or whatever that's been founded by whoever, then I've always found myself led back to myself. And the ultimate truth that the revolution that needs to happen on this planet is a revolution that has no leaders. It has no organized body. It's an individual revolution. It's an evolution of consciousness is what is happening on the planet. There are no leaders, and there can be no leaders in bringing this system down. What is required is for people to discover their own personal power and turn their back on the system. And the way you turn your back on the system, folks, is by connecting with the people around you. And it's extremely important for you people out there listening to this show to know that if you are a listener of this show, if you're a regular listener of this show, and you truly understand the message that I've been bringing to you for the last 6 years, then you are the resistance. Because this system, we have to bring it down. We cannot participate in it anymore, folks. It does not serve mankind's best interests. It does not serve our needs. In fact, it does everything it can to do quite the opposite. It limits our potential at every opportunity. It prevents us from being all that we could be by its every parameter that it installs. And its main purpose is to divide and conquer the community so that the people may be more easily controlled. And we absolutely have to turn our back on it. We are at a crucial time in history when this really does need to be done. And it's up to us each personally to make the conscious decision to do this, because that is the only thing that is going to change the direction the ship of state is currently sailing. The thing is, folks, that everything about this system has been designed to disempower the individual and to take the rights away from the individual, to take responsibility away from the individual, to ensure that everyone is controlled by the nanny state. And the way the state has made people believe in the state so much and has made people believe that they need the state so much is by imposing all of these systems of discomfort over the people. See, all the sickness is all created by the state, and so the people believe they need the state to protect them against all the terrible diseases that are out there. But these are all false flag operations, folks. There's a wonderful quote that I often use by Plato. In fact, you'll find it in the clip information on every YouTube clip that I've put out in the last year or two. And Plato said that when the tyrant has disposed of foreign enemies by conquest or treaty, and there is nothing left to fear from them, then he is always stirring up some war or other in order that the people may require a leader. That's the thing, folks. You don't require a leader unless there's problems to be dealt with. And that is why the government is always creating problems for the people over which they preside. Because that is the only way that the government can convince the people that we actually need government to remain in place, because the truth of the matter is that we don't. And if you seriously think that we do, folks, well, just look at what these people have done. Now we've got a system that has inflicted sickness upon the world through the imposition of the pharmaceutical industry over the minds of people. It's stolen people's life skills from them by the imposition of a government-controlled education system, which has taught people nothing that they need to know about the world, but has presented them with the mechanism by which they can be a functional cog in the big machine, and they can go out and exploit the world in order to support the economic model. That's what the education system has been reduced to. And while this has been going on, we've had our food stocks tampered with. We've had absolutely criminal genocidal companies such as Monsanto taking control of the global food stocks, the introduction of genetically modified foods which cause a myriad of health problems for any who consume them. And not only that, we've got governments that are so corrupt that they would allow a criminal company such as Monsanto to own the patents on certain seeds, which of course is completely invalid legislation that people should ignore at every possible opportunity. And I say it's invalid legislation because it's morally reprehensible, and of course any morally reprehensible legislation that is enacted by public trustees should be ignored by default, and the corrupt trustee who sought to enact it should be held accountable for their actions. We've got the destruction of our water table going on from coal seam gas mining. We've got Fukushima pouring waste into the oceans. We've got various nuclear meltdowns happening around the planet, actually. Let's not forget that Chernobyl is actually still melting down as well. We've got the death of the bees that I talked about last week. 50% of the global bee population is gone, folks. We've got all sorts of problems that are going on this planet, and yet we still continue to petition governments and to look for remedy from government. And yet it's the government who created all the problems to begin with, folks. It's like getting beaten up by a crime gang, and when you are sick of being beaten up, you go and ask the crime gang to please do something about the crime gang that's beating you up. It makes no sense. You know, if you've got issues because the world's being run by criminals, it's no good going and asking the criminals to please help you. And make no mistake, folks, that these people are criminals. Our governments are all criminals, folks. Everything that they've done to mankind is criminal in itself. The fact that they would even impose a monetary system over your life is criminal. The fact that they would make you pay to be here and allow you to be completely discarded if you don't collect enough paper to survive is criminal in itself. What they're doing to our water table is criminal. What they're doing to our environment is criminal. What they've done to our health is criminal. Look at the marijuana situation, folks, the hemp industry, the medical marijuana situation. We've got doctors now. CNN's chief medical expert has gone public and said he apologises for misleading the public on the health benefits of weed. And people are now praising this man, saying, oh, look, what a good guy he is. But, folks, he isn't saying, hey, look, I've just discovered that I was wrong. What he said was, I was misleading you. In other words, I was lying to you. But now that we've got people discovering the health benefits of hemp and discovering that hemp oil can cure a myriad of diseases, we now have the government attempting some kind of damage control and attempting to move in and control the area and control the situation and tell the public that marijuana is actually not a herb, it is a pharmaceutical plant, and that we need to isolate certain compounds in it so that we can control it and bring you a medicine which will not get you high, but will contain what we believe it should contain in order to give you some health benefits. So again, folks, it's the government attempting to move in and control a situation. But let's not forget that it was the government and government criminality that created the illegal status of the plant in the beginning. It was government and government criminality which created the sickness by superimposing the pharmaceutical industry over the hemp industry. It was the government and government criminality that created all of the problems to begin with. So why on earth would we consider giving these same criminals control over this plant? These people are just megalomaniacal control freaks, folks. They're liars. They want to control everything you do, everything you say, and control every aspect of your life. They don't want you to be empowered, and they don't want you to be able to grow and make your own medicinal products. They want to be able to control everything and convince you that you need the nanny state to look after you. But my words to them are to keep your hands off this plant. We don't want you to legalize marijuana. We want you to leave it the hell alone. Just get it out of the books altogether. It doesn't need controlling. It does not need government involvement in any way, shape, or form. And don't let these public trustees, these criminal governments, railroad you into letting them control any aspect of your life, folks. We all need to realize that we can bring this system down by taking the system's food and sustenance away from it. Because the food and sustenance of the system is the energy we give the system through our belief that the system is real. But it's not. It's fiction. It just exists on paper. It's a system of slavery that was created by public trustees that is being used to steal the wealth of the planet, and that's all this system is, and that's all these politicians are. And we don't need to give them any more power, folks, and we don't need to let them control any aspect of our lives, and we especially don't need them to be coming on and telling us that they've made all of these massive scientific discoveries about hemp, when we've had people like Rick Simpson and other people who've been producing medical marijuana videos and giving the information to the public for a great many years now. And as I said, folks, all we're seeing really from the government moves to legalise and control hemp is damage control and, of course, just control in general. So, of course, the question posed by all of this is, what is the remedy to our situation? What can we do to rescue ourselves from the hooks of this system? What can we do to escape the corruption? Essentially, what is the silver bullet? What is going to save us from the system that enslaves us? And there has been a lot of people asking this question. There truly has. This is what has sparked the entire free man movement, whereby people have been looking for remedy within the system, looking for remedy within the pages of legality that control us to find the way out. And it's great to see the work that they've done, because what their work has done has exposed the mechanism for us. It's exposed the fiction. It's shown us what the system actually is. But what people are often forgetting is that even these legal parameters that they're finding loopholes and finding a way through are simply stuff that we made up. It's just a paper-based matrix. It's not real. It's just an idea of how the world should be. Because ultimately there is only one law, and that is do no harm, and we are only answerable to our Creator. Anything else under that is a creation of man, and anything under that that seeks to control you is essentially a slavery system. Because ultimately, integrity has no need of rules. And so if you act in integrity in all that you do, and you behave in a manner that benefits humankind, and you expand your consciousness, and you do something positive with your life and leave the world better than how you found it through the creative input that you offered during your time here, then how could anything that you've done be perceived to be a crime? And if the system is such that it prevents you from doing any of the above, then it is the system itself which has committed the crime. But we never address it from that perspective, and we always try to challenge the system in what it does. We go up against it. We try to use the legal parameters to achieve some sort of victory against the system. We don't ever stop at the very onset and question the authority that this system claims to have over us, because that's what we need to do. I mean, sure, it's not easy to do on the side of the road with a police officer, because let's face it, these people just aren't very intelligent. They're very often sociopaths, very violent people who love to use tasers and beat you up, and essentially use terrorist tactics against you. In other words, violence or the threat of violence in order to coerce you into compliance. And this is terrorism by definition. So this is what most modern police are. So I don't suggest that you question authority too much at that level unless you have a fair amount of backup around you and you're in a very public place. But as far as the court system goes and any jurisdiction this system is claiming to have over you, you always need to remember that you are ultimately a member of mankind. That's what you are. And all below mankind is a creation of mankind. You are not the corporate entity that they claim you are. You are not a name. You are not ink spots on a piece of paper. You are living flesh dealing with other aspects of consciousness who are also living flesh. And if there has been no injured party in your actions, then you always do need to question the jurisdiction of these people. Very often lately you've heard me use the term sui generis, S-U-I-G-E-N-E-R-I-S. And if you haven't heard of that term, I suggest you go look it up. That is a legal definition of your uniqueness. And this is what you are. This is what everybody is. And this is what we need to do. This is how the revolution happens, folks. This is when people begin to understand that they are all unique aspects of creation. We are all in this together. There is no one who is of any more or any less worth than anybody else. And there is nobody who has jurisdiction over you. The whole system that we believe is real is a fictional construct that only exists on paper, that's been created by public trustees whom we employ to manage our infrastructure for us. But what they've done is they've enslaved everybody to debt, and they've controlled the education system, and they've taught people to believe that the government is needed and that they are our rulers, but really they're just public trustees who are literally stealing the wealth of the planet and transferring it into private hands because we're not paying attention to what's going on. We've forgotten who we are. It's taken a couple of generations, but they've managed to disconnect most of humankind, and we've now reached the point where most of the planet has forgotten who and what they are completely. They believe the system is real. They focus their lives on the collecting of meaningless trinkets and attempting to achieve standards and social aspects of their lives that they will likely never reach because they do not exist. And while this is all going on, the human race is also being genetically modified through the use of all of the GM food and all the toxins and the environmental damage that's being done, the fluoride in the water, all of the things that these people are doing, folks. There's so much going on, and this is why we need to pay attention. But not only do we need to pay attention, because there is many people that are doing that, we also need to understand what the remedy is. And I keep coming back to it, folks. I've been banging this drum for 6 years. The remedy is for you to know who you are and to stand up and question these people in the correct way. And I've very often said as well that the best way to do this and to have real success is to have your whole community standing up with you, or at least a good portion of it. I mean, there might be certain people within the community who will rub things the wrong way. There'll be certain plants in there that attempt to upset the apple cart. But you don't need your entire community, folks. You just need a good portion of it. You just need to have enough people that are willing to stand up and make a difference. And as I said, there will be always those that you find in the community that will try to steer things in the direction that they want it to go and to control the movement and to upset the apple cart. And you've got to be aware of that and you've got to prepare for that. But as long as there's no leaders in the movement, then they can't ever really do it, because what we're dealing with here is an idea whose time has come. And you can't stop that. And there doesn't need to be leaders, because there are no leaders. There can never be leaders in a real revolution, in a true revolution, in a truly empowered humanity. There can never be any leaders. It has to be each individual leading themselves, because each individual knows who and what they are. Each individual knows that there is nobody who has jurisdiction over them. But again, they do not have any jurisdiction over anybody else. That's why I don't go and attack the system. I don't go and attack the judges and attack the court and attack the politicians, because I don't have any jurisdiction over them. I can simply offer my perspective, and if they attempt to inflict themselves upon me, then I can also question their authority. But I always try to treat these individuals with respect, because many of them are simply brainwashed. The police are brainwashed. They don't know what they're doing. They might be violent thugs, and half of them are sociopaths and terrorists, but they still don't know what they're doing. They've still been programmed to be that way. And so I can't really hate them for what they do. I can be offended by what they do. I can find it reprehensible. I can stand up against these people. I can get quite annoyed and I can get quite angry with them. But I don't have it in my heart to hate these people. I just don't have it in my heart to hate anybody, I don't think. I can be truly disgusted with people on a really deep level. I can, folks. But I still don't hate them. It just never seems to become that. And on a deeper level, I always tend to have pity for people who I see committing unspeakable acts, because I can only imagine how disconnected these people must be. And I feel sorry, I feel truly sorry for any frequency of consciousness, any person, any individual, any aspect of creation that has to stoop to such levels or has been reduced to such levels, very often by the system itself, that they would do such things. Admittedly, there are sociopaths and psychopaths. There are people who simply get enjoyment out of inflicting harm upon others. And the reason that these people are so prevalent in our society today is, of course, because of the loss of shamanistic traditions. And so it's very difficult to feel compassion for these people. But by the same token, I still feel a great deal of pity for them. I really do. I can't imagine what it would be like going through life to be that way. I mean, they probably enjoy themselves and it's all good to them, but I don't know. I mean, to me, life and creation is worth so much more, and I can't help but wonder why such anomalies appear within our consciousness, whether it is some aspect of an outside force, something like what the Gnostics say with the archons, or perhaps it's simply a darker side of ourselves. But I can't help but wonder where it comes from, why this evil exists in the world, why it's there. Because it seems to be so anomalous. It just doesn't seem to be anything natural. People will say to me, well, come on, Max, there's always going to be evil people. There's going to be evil people that do evil things because we're all different, and some people just get their rocks off in other ways than others. And I can understand that, but I still feel that evil itself is an anomaly. The need or the will to do harm to another individual, the need or the will to pull the wings off a butterfly or whatever it is that these people do, I mean, to me it just feels like it's an anomaly, and I can't help but wonder where it comes from. This is why I've looked at so many aspects of this for so long, folks, and I've always sat back in wonderment at the state of human consciousness. When I've been thinking about it lately, I've been having visions of a scene that I've seen on the movie trailer to World War Z, where you've got that horde of zombies climbing over each other to get up that wall to reach some imaginary goal. And I look at that and I truly see that as a metaphor for humanity in general. And just hordes upon hordes of mindless zombies climbing and clambering over each other and trampling each other in order to reach an imaginary and essentially unobtainable goal. That's what humankind seems to be doing, generally speaking, at the moment. If you really step back and look at our species on this planet, it's remarkable the lengths that we go to destroy everything around us and destroy everybody around us in order to reach a goal which is essentially fictitious, a goal of ownership of all this stuff, which we don't need, doesn't serve us, and even ownership of the planet, which we can never obtain because nobody can own the earth. And we've been led down this path essentially because we have, as a species, been dispossessed of our heritage being the earth. We were born here to experience this life and experience creation and experience life on this planet, which is a paradisical place. It truly is a wonderful, remarkable planet that we live on. It has the potential to be a lot better than what it is at the moment, but we've made a few changes that may not be the best. But it just fascinates me, folks, to see the current human dilemma and the pickle that we seem to have collectively gotten ourselves into, mainly due to our non-participation in the reality around us. Well, look, I think it's break time here, folks, so I better leave it there for now. It's a pleasure having your company on the air today, and I will speak to you again in a few minutes. Thanks for listening. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, so we are facing a dire situation on this planet, folks. We have criminals that are running our world, and things are most certainly spiraling out of control. All of the things that I mentioned to you in the beginning of the show, Monsanto, coal seam gas mining, Fukushima, the global economic situation, the loss of the bees, GM food. I mean, there's so many things that are wrong with this place, folks. And as I said, each one of these problems is a creation of government. That's the real problem, folks, is that our governments are criminals, and they're openly declaring their criminality these days. They really are. I mean, even here in Australia, we've got the Australian Attorney General, an obvious sociopath by the name of Mark Dreyfus. I mean, and this is the Australian Attorney General, folks. This is the head of the Australian legal system. And he says that Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning should not be regarded as whistleblowers because the information that they made public did not expose government wrongdoing. You get that? Did not expose government wrongdoing. He is saying there is nothing wrong with the US military shooting civilians. He's saying there is nothing wrong with the US government and Australian governments and certain Western governments all working in collusion to carry out espionage against their people and against the rest of the planet. He says there is no problem spying and stealing people's passwords and knowing everything they can about everybody and that all this is good. There's nothing wrong with it. It was not any wrongdoing. And he also expressed concerns that the leaks might cause long-lasting harm to Australia's ability to respond to the many threats our nation faces. Folks, the only threats we face are from government and other governments overseas who all work in collusion to make sure that the people of the world feel threatened, so that we need governments there to protect us. And this is the head of Australia's legal system, folks, the Australian Attorney-General, who is saying there is nothing wrong with the criminal actions of our government and the criminal actions of the United States military. He probably thinks there's nothing wrong with the illegal war in Iraq as well. And this is the type of scum that is in control of our legal system. So what hope is there of ever finding any legal remedy within the parameters of such a corrupt system? And most especially when you've got people such as Mark Dreyfus who are openly stating his corruption and his idiocy with public statements such as the one he just made about Edward Snowden and Bradley Manning. The man's a moron, folks. He's a criminal, he's a liar, he's a sociopath, and he should be in jail because that's where he deserves to be. I mean, honestly, folks, I'm totally sick of these scumbags going on television and going to the newspapers and making some idiotic statement in order to justify their own criminal actions and the criminal actions of the sociopaths that they work for. I'm sick to death of these scumbags running this planet, folks. But the interesting part about it as well is how the public laps it up. I mean, you'll have people that were considering Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden to be whistleblowers, who will have then heard the Attorney-General make this statement and then have suddenly changed their opinion and gone, oh no, they weren't whistleblowers at all because everything the government was doing was legal. And again, folks, we get back to this whole definition of what is legal and what is lawful. People believe that if it's legal, then it's lawful, but they don't understand that all legal means is that some sociopath in Parliament wrote something down on a piece of paper and said, look, now we can do it because we made this up and we said we can do it and we signed it, so now we can do it. That's all legal means. I mean, in America, they've drafted new legislation so that it's legal to torture people. And they don't call it torture, they call it enhanced interrogation techniques. So simply by using soft language, they're able to torture people, legally torture people, and still get up there and lie to the public and say, oh, we don't torture people. So it doesn't matter whether they say something's legal, folks, because there's only one law, and that law is do no harm, and all our governments do to us is harm. And the only reason they get away with it, as I've so often said, is because we let them get away with it because we don't know who we are. And that's been the purpose of virtually every show that I've done on this radio station, folks. In the last 6 years, this has been the same message, basically repackaged for you in as many possible ways as I can think of to say it. Because after years and years of searching and after years of looking down legal pathways and spiritual pathways and esoteric pathways and reading books and looking at things, what I've been led to is myself. What I've been led to is the fact that everything that we believe we are fighting against is a creation of mankind. It's all fiction, folks. Mankind is what you are. And once the people of this planet realize this and remember who and what they are, and remember why we created society, why we believed there was a need for government to be there, and begin to wake up to what this mechanism has become, well, that is when we're going to see some change in the world, folks. There's no need for any violent revolution. There's no need for anyone to attack anybody else. There's no need to learn legal remedies and go into court with a piece of paper to attack the system. All you need to do is to realize that the system is fiction and to connect with the neighbors around you and help them to understand that the system is fiction so that we can all stand together and put something decent in place, something that manages our infrastructure for us, something that frees humanity. You know, we don't need to spend our lives enslaved to an economic model. Sure, if people want to use money, they want something to pass things around to each other so they can perform commerce and buy stuff. I mean, okay, whatever. It doesn't matter. But let's not have the type of system that we've got now that is transferring all the wealth of the planet into the hands of those who print the paper. Because that's what we've got. It's a slavery system that is stealing the wealth of the planet. And it's happening because we think it's real and we keep using its parameters to try to fight against it. We won't step above it because we're too scared to. You know, we've got these thugs in blue uniforms that come and carry out acts of terrorism against us all the time. We've got guys in fancy suits that we somehow believe have a right of ownership over us. They take us to buildings and they make us do what it says on these pieces of paper. It's all fiction, folks. It really is. And I've travelled and I've met lots of people from lots of different walks of life, and I've never met anybody who wanted war. And every single person that I've met across the board wants change. They want to escape this system, but they don't know how to do it. And folks, the way to do it is through common unity. You know, once we've got that, once we learn to respect ourselves and respect each other, then we can change things. Overnight we can change things. And this is why I've worked so hard to talk to people about reality and how reality works, and the need to see the perfection of themselves so that they can respect themselves and understand how to interact with the world. Because you do, it changes your perspective of how to interact with the world, and you start interacting with the world and with people around you in a completely different manner, and things just change around you. And this is why I put so much time into doing this and put so much effort into helping people understand the power of themselves, because that is the key. That's the key to everything, folks, because when you truly respect yourself, then you can respect others and all the barriers break down. You know, if we can just stop thinking about our lives economically for a little while, if we could just stop running on the treadmill and reducing every aspect of our lives to commerce, putting commercial value on everything, believing that we own things around us and believing that we own all this land and we own all this and we own all that and we're king of the castle and all the things that we do, just put it all away. It's all fiction. It's all a construct. It's all created to divide society. Because a united society is the key. A united society, a united community, I don't even know why I'm using the word society, but a united community has the power to change everything, folks. And that's what we have to do. And I truly believe that we're only going to do that once we learn to respect ourselves. And like I said, folks, I've gone down all the rabbit holes. I've looked for remedy in all the places I could think of. But all of them involved stepping through fiction. All of them involved pieces of paper. All of them involved using the parameters that are put there to enslave society and to tie people up in red tape. And ultimately, what I was looking for was myself. That's what it's all about, folks. The power of yourself, the power of you to affect change is incredible. If you could simply discover your own power. But that's what I found, folks, after all the rabbit holes that I went down and all the paths that I took, is that what I was looking for was myself. And this is why I put so much energy into attempting to help people discover the power of themselves and the perfection of themselves. You don't need the nanny state to look after you. You don't need all of the things that this government gives you, the vaccines and all of the terrible, terrible things that this government has forced upon the human experience. The reduction of your life to commerce. You don't need any of this, folks. We don't need these governments to do any of the things that we're doing. There is no threat from the world that's going to come and get you. There's just people. The only threat come from governments. And every country on this planet, every person in every country on the planet needs to wake up to the fact that there are criminals that are running this place. That's all they are, folks. That's all government is. It's a big crime gang. It's a big global crime gang that works for banking cartels. I suppose that would be the top of the food chain. That's the real crime gang, is the banking cartels that have created this corporate system around the planet, and they've put all the various CEOs in, which are all governments are. We've got the mechanism to run the store. That's all government is, so that the resources of each country can be harvested for the banking cartels at the top of the food chain. And it's a criminal empire, folks, and it gets away with what it does because it writes rules on pieces of paper and dares to call it law. And as we've just seen, folks, these people don't care. As we can see by the statements made by Mark Dreyfus, the Australian Attorney-General, these people don't care about right and wrong. They don't care whether people are being murdered. They don't care whether people are being stolen from and spied on. They don't care. They're sociopaths, and their only goal is to make this system run efficiently for the corporate slave masters that they work for. That is the goal of governments in every country on this planet, bar perhaps Iceland. I think they have done quite a nice job of kicking the banks out of their country, and I hope the rest of the world does the same. But it's not going to happen until the people of our society discover their own power and stand up and hold these corrupt public trustees in each of our countries accountable for their actions. I mean, that's what has to be done, folks, because we can't do it by thinking we can vote people in and vote people out. We can't play within those parameters anymore. It's theatre. All we're doing is electing a new CEO for the corporate empire. We're electing a new slave master for the next 4 or 5 years. That's all an election does. It gives people the illusion that they have a choice in what happens in the country. But, of course, they don't have any choice at all. It's just getting a new slave master. And each time we get these people in, they stay in for a while, and then they do such a bad job that we think, oh, my God, that didn't work. We better get the other guy back in. And we forget what a bad job they did the time before. And what we don't really appear to notice, generally as a society, is that there is a higher agenda which just keeps moving in the same direction. And that's what it's all about. These people are just different faces on the same coin that work for the same corporate empire, which is raping the wealth of this planet from the people because the people believe this fictional system is actually real. So there's your solution right there, folks. I mean, knowing the problem is really half of the battle. Knowing the problem is really a major, major part of the solution. So that's what the problem is, folks. It's a corporate empire, and we've forgotten who we are. These are just public trustees. There is no remedy in the system, so don't even think you can go down legal pathways. Just stand up and be who you are. That's what the world has to do. Like I said earlier, folks, the revolution that needs to happen on this planet is not a revolution or a movement that has any type of organized body. It's an individual thing. It is each individual consciousness on this planet coming online, each frequency coming online, each person discovering themselves and discovering that they can step above the fiction. And they can do it if they act in integrity. That's all it takes. That's why you need to have it all based in respect. That's why you need to respect yourself so that you can respect others. That's why I don't go to fight the system, because I have integrity. The system is fiction, and I have no jurisdiction over those people who wish to operate within that system. If they choose to do it, they're free to do so. My only issue is when they attempt to inflict that system upon me. And because that system is responsible for the rape and destruction of this planet, then I think it's important for me to point out to those around me and those that I come into contact with the fact that it is a fictional system, the damage that it is doing, and the criminal minds that are running the system. Because they are criminal minds, folks, because, I mean, if I can figure out all this and figure out how this system is running and really look at it, folks, I mean, you can see it. It's laid bare, just with the Edward Snowden revelations, just with what Bradley Manning showed you, just with all the stuff the alternate research community has been pointing out to you, just the actions of Monsanto, the thousands of farmers that have committed suicide because the seeds have failed and they're all Terminator crops, and the terrible damage that's being done on this planet, coal seam gas mining, oil exploration and oil spills and Fukushima. I mean, there's so many things, folks. We don't need to go through it all again. There's so many things, so much evidence on this planet to point out government criminality that I don't need to go into it anymore. And there can really be no debate at all that our governments are criminal organizations simply by looking at their track record, looking at the actions of these people. Because all the things that I just mentioned, remember, have all happened due to legislation that's been put in place by government. Because they made all this stuff up, they wrote it on pieces of paper, and they said this is the way the world operates now because we said so. This is a slavery system, folks. And when you really look at all of that, you begin to see that there is no remedy. within the parameters of the system. There will never be any remedy within the parameters of the system, because the system is designed to make sure you will not find remedy within those legal parameters. That's why you have to step above it. You have to see what it is. You have to see that it is fiction. And the way to step above it, as I've said, is to respect yourself and respect your neighbours. We need this power of community. And I think it's a very easy thing to do. I mean, I find respect for myself comes naturally once I understand how reality works and who and what I am. And that's why I've put so much energy into that on previous shows as well, explaining the nature of reality. There's a show that I did, I think, back in 2011 called The Energetic Universe. I think it was around about July, I think, in 2011, July or August. It was just before I went to Broome. I recommend that you have a listen to that show for a few more insights on that. But this is why I put so much effort into this, folks, because I think it's important that people understand how reality works, because when they do, then that respect comes by default. I mean, just the fascination for reality immediately came online with me when I discovered how reality worked. I mean, I spend my life in a constant state of fascination. I've said this to you before as well. And this is a huge benefit to me. It's a huge source of strength for me in every aspect of my life, just my understanding of how reality works. It's a huge rock of support that I find for every aspect of my life, folks. And since I gained this type of knowledge, I honestly haven't had a bad day. I honestly haven't had any time when I felt the need to be in a state of fear or stress or anything like that. It just doesn't happen for me anymore. Life just seems to work because of the way I view reality. Well, that's what I put it down to anyway, folks, because that's when things started to change for me. That's when life began to take on a whole new meaning for me, and things just started to work. Synchronicities started to come into my life, and I started to follow them, and things just seemed to lead me to where they were supposed to go. I mean, that is not to say that I'm wealthy or anything like that. I mean, I don't own property. I don't have a lot of the mod cons that most people have. I live quite a humble existence. But I'm very happy in that. I just don't want for a lot of stuff. I don't need fame or fortune. And frankly, I think that there's just far too much going on for me to focus my attention on those sorts of things. I think that the world needs our attention, folks, and that's what I attempt to do, is give it as much attention as I can, just because I think it's necessary. So really, that is the remedy, folks. The remedy is you. The remedy is an understanding that the global revolution that we're seeing, the global evolution of consciousness that we're experiencing, is an individual thing. There is no movement you can join. There is no organization you can sign up to. The united movement is a united human consciousness. That is what we are seeing, and that is what this time in history is. It's a time when humankind actually comes online. Mankind actually wakes up to their own potential. And this is an individual awakening, folks. It has to be done by each individual human being on this planet. There is no leader to this revolution, nor can there ever be a leader to such an awakening. Because that's really what it is, folks. It's a calling to awaken to yourself. That's really what this time is. That's why I put out the film, The Calling, because that's what this time in history is, folks. It's a calling for all of humanity to awaken to what they are, awaken to their own potential, awaken to the state of slumber that we have as a species spent many thousands of years in. We have, folks, we've been asleep. We've been slowly coaxed into a very restless slumber, and a slumber in which we have given away all of our personal power, and we've allowed the construction of a nanny state around us, which has gently lulled us into a sense of false security, told us to lie down, to be quiet, to keep our eyes closed, that it's all good, that the state will look after you. But really, it's just a control mechanism which is designed to prevent you from being all that you can be. And it's a control mechanism which will eventually lead to the destruction of most of the life on this planet. And it's important, folks, it's important that we return to the earth. It's important that we return to our spiritual roots, that we turn to our biological and ecological roots. It's time that we return to ourselves. It's time that we return to mankind. This is why we're seeing so many shamans coming out around the world now and doing ayahuasca ceremonies as many places as they can in an attempt to wake up Western society and lead them back to their connection to the planet, the connection that we've lost, the spiritual connection that we've lost. Because the shaman that still exists on the planet and the people that still live in the forests understand that if Western civilization continues on its path of slumber and destruction, then we will take the entire world down with us. And the most important thing that we can do as Western people is to rediscover our connection to the earth, because that's what we've lost. This connection still exists in many third world countries, but it doesn't exist in Western society anymore. Even the connection to the families doesn't really exist in a lot of Western societies. We're all taught to throw our kids out of home at 18 and to put them on the commercial treadmill, and we can't wait to get the kids away from us. And then once we are old, the kids discard us and put us in a nursing home. They can't wait for the parents to die so they can have the parents' stuff. It's a ridiculously sociopathic society that we've constructed, and it really doesn't benefit us at all. And we need to re-establish these family connections. We need to re-establish our human connections, and we desperately need to re-establish our connection to this planet. Because this planet is our home, folks, and it's been destroyed around us through the action of governments, but more importantly, the governments are getting away with it through our own inaction. Because ultimately it all comes down to us, folks. I can look at the governments and I can point the finger and I can blame them for what they've done, but they've only done that because we have forgotten who we are. Admittedly, we've been trained to forget who we are through the government-controlled education system, and it's important that we see that as well. It's important that we forgive ourselves for what we've done. It's important that you forgive yourself for any and all of your past transgressions. It's important that you understand these are a construct because you were never given an even playing field. Nobody within this social structure was. And that's what we're seeing here, folks, is an awakening to this. An awakening to the fact that we can forgive ourselves and we can forgive those around us. We can forgive those who have harmed us. I can. I don't really wish revenge or harm on anyone. I just want the world to change, and I'm doing my bit to ensure that it does. But look, folks, I think we've reached the end of this show here, so that is it for me today. I'm going to have to leave it there. For those who are wondering about the Full Circle project, it is on the back burner at the moment, folks. I have received a lot of email from people who have been inquiring about it, but it is on the back burner because I've just got so much on my plate at the moment that I'm finding it very difficult to put it together. So we'll just have to see how that goes. But it is something that will definitely happen in the future. But as I said, folks, we are at the end of the show now. Thank you very much for spending this time with me on the air today. Thank you to anybody who's ever made a contribution to the website. They're sorely needed at the moment, folks. If you can afford to throw a few dollars in, it would be most appreciated. I truly do hate asking for donations, but it's the only thing that gets me by at the moment. So if you could, it would be greatly appreciated. You will find a PayPal and email link on the homepage of thecrowhouse.com. And again, thank you to anybody who ever has offered support to the website, and thank you to anybody who has ever sent me a kind email. Your emails and your kind thoughts are for me as food. Much love to you all, my friends, but that is it for me. I will have to leave it there. I'll look forward to speaking to you again next week. Please take good care until then. And never forget that, as I said near the beginning of this broadcast, if you are someone out there who is a regular listener of this show and you really truly do understand the message that I've been bringing to you for these last 6 years, then make no mistake about it. You are the resistance. In Lakesh.